come from? And where are we going?
Welcome friends, this is Red Ice Creations Radio. My name is Henrik Palmgren. I'm the editor of redicecreations.com and I am your host. We are recording from the west coast of Sweden, and I hope you visit the website, follow along with the news, updated almost on a daily basis, and that you check out our radio show, of course. We have a new show up there for you every Thursday and Sunday. And I'm very glad that you are here with us today, because we are all in for a real treat. We have investigative journalist, author and researcher Philip Coppens with us on the line. And Philip seems to be a very interesting guy. He covers a lot of very interesting topics on his website, which is, by the way, philipcoppens.com, for all of you out there who want to check out this right away, philipcoppens.com. He is also the author to a number of books, the Canopus Revelation, the Stone Puzzle of Roslyn Chapel, and the Secret Vault, to mention just a few. I've been following his website for a while, and I really enjoy Philip's writing, so I'm very glad that we have him with us here today to be able to talk some more about his research, his book and his writings. So with that, let me say welcome, Philip, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Not at all. Pleasure is mine.
Excellent. It's great to have you. I'm really excited about the program. There are so many topics that I'd like to talk to you about today, and I know that we won't have time to get to them all, but to give the listeners some kind of background, I guess, on you, it's always interesting and a good place, I think, to start to kind of ask you, how you ended up beginning to write about the subjects that you do. I read in your bio that I guess your initial work was on John F. Kennedy's alleged assassin Lee Harvey Oswald. So was this kind of the way into these subjects for you?
It was an inroad, yes. I was in essence a mainstream journalist, and I was mostly interested in politics. And at the time, running up to the 30th anniversary at the time, 1993, of the John F. Kennedy assassination, I kind of delved in a bit into the John F. Kennedy assassination itself. And at the time, there was this claim made by Bill Cooper, who said that the driver is the word I'm looking for,
sure.
of the car in which Kennedy was killed in Dallas, was the person killing him. But also he was saying that Kennedy was killed for knowledge about UFOs. Now the first claim, people who were familiar with the Kennedy assassination knew that this wasn't true, because there were images, there were film footage of what had happened, and so we kind of thought, okay, that's not true. But the second bit, why would somebody claim that there is this thing about UFOs then? So I just began to look into that, and throughout the past 14 years since that moment in time, I've always been intrigued by the fact that there is this political, this conspiratorial dimension to UFOs and to various phenomena, secret societies, and that there is that connection. But I think I probably disagree with most as to what that connection is, and I'm sure we'll get into that. And this kind of research redirected my life slightly, in the sense that I got a different kind of job. I became employed by a publisher who published several books on the mystery of Rennes Chateau, megalithic civilizations, and things like that.
Yeah.
So apart from the hard political, dry world of politics, finance, and international economics, I began to develop a passion of the alternative field. And when people ask, do I like it, it seems like it, because I keep writing about it. So.
Yeah, you keep returning to it, I guess. Difficult to break free of it.
It is a passion, and the way I've kind of approached it is very much subject-wise. The one big revelation I've had of all of this is that a lot of these cultures built their civilizations in extremely sunny climates, So they're extremely good holiday destinations for a person who doesn't just like sitting on a beach, but who likes to see something of the world.
Yeah.
And places like Tulum in Mexico, they've literally built the Mayan temples on the edge of the beach. So it's the best of both worlds.
That sounds good. Yeah, it's a good idea. I'd love to begin, I guess, talking a little bit about the Canopus Revelation. I know that there is some Stargate material in that book, and then this is something that I've been fascinated with for some time. And a bit later in the next segment, I'd love to kind of dive into your work on the Stargate conundrum and so forth, and the Stargate conspiracy. But let's begin talk about Canopus. Well, I guess we could lead into this by asking what that is. I guess this is two things. It's a star, and it's also a city in Egypt. Isn't that correct?
Yes, I mean Canopus is the second brightest star in our sky, and you have to be at the latitude of 36 degrees north or further south for it to be seen. Now, in places like Egypt, it acts as the South Pole star, and it's one of these intriguing things whereby after I worked quite a lot in the late 1990s with Lynn Picknett and Clive Prince, and after they've written Canopus Revelation, we kind of started to look into what was behind this John the Baptist phenomenon. If he was preaching in the desert a message of an Egyptian influence, where was that religion coming from? And everything pointed to Alexandria, and a suburb of Alexandria was a town or a village called Canopus, and it was a very intriguing village. Lots of interesting things happened there. A very famous decree about how the Egyptian calendar would be no longer respected, and instead the calendar as we know it today would come about. That decision was made in Canopus, and we're kind of beginning to find out that this is the second brightest star. Surely the ancient Egyptians must have had a specific reference for it, specifically because it sits in that same kind of quadrant of the sky with Orion, with Sirius, and Sirius was their most important star.
Yeah.
And we kind of thought, why is nobody talking about Canopus? Are the ancient Egyptians not talking about Canopus? And if they're not talking about Canopus, isn't that saying something in itself? Because there's no doubt they could have missed the fact that there was this bright star right on the South Pole in their civilization. So it became kind of like a quest to try and find out what Canopus really was all about. And very early on, we had no idea. And in fact, I had written the book once, kind of like, this is what the book will be like. And I still hadn't come to the kind of like the final realizations which I had put in the book as it has been published now.
Yeah.
But in short, Canopus is a very bright star. Ancient sources like Plutarch linked it with the dead Osiris. When you read Plutarch says quite straightforwardly, Isis equals Sirius. And then everybody, today is saying that Orion equals Osiris. Plutarch, in his day, was saying, no, it's not. Orion equals Horus, and Canopus equals Osiris.
Yeah.
And it kind of like opened up the fact that we had to look into star lore, and then we began to find out that Canopus was indeed an important star, but for some bizarre reason, hardly anybody wrote about it. A person that in the 1940s, Henry Lutz, he wrote a complete dissertation about Canopus, and it got published in a massive print run of 50 copies. So, for some reason, nobody ever wanted to talk about Canopus, which bizarre in itself.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, if we were to talk a little bit about, I guess, Osiris and Isis, I mean, in your book and so forth, do you go into kind of the background of these guys? I mean, what are we talking about here? Actual, only deities, gods, or actual people, or something else walking around physically on the planet?
I think that they are definitely concepts. I don't think they were physical people. And I do think if we had to identify them as something, I think they would be archetypes. They would be a force. They would somehow be a template. We see when we look around in society, we do see single women with small children, and we do see men ending up like Osiris. So all of these deities, when you look at their characteristics, you do see that they are quite typical. They're almost like the fact that astrologers are kind of saying, well, there really only are 12 kinds of human beings out there, and each one of us fits in one of those categories. I think that's a bit the approach of ancient Egyptians as well. If you put a person in a certain situation, he will react in a certain way, and I think that's kind of like the underlying layer, if you want, of what these deities are about. But that message, over the years, over thousands of years of prehistory and ancient Egyptian history, has become sculpted and has become ever more adapted. So in a person like Osiris, you have got the Jesus myth for our generation, but you also have the myth of star lore, of people sitting around a campfire at night and looking at the stars and imagining heroic tales. You have got magical concepts of religion and what people thought was possible by the use of talismans and everything else. So a person, it's not probably a good word, but an image like Osiris has got so many connotations that you need to bring in, you need to take each one almost apart.
Yeah.
And you probably end up with 14 parts.
Is it? Could we kind of draw into the picture here the hero's journey, that kind of story?
Oh yeah, I mean the hero story of ancient Egypt actually isn't so much to do with Osiris. There were many legends of in Sumeria you have the Enuma Elish, but you have other stories which are exactly like the Grail legend. And people are kind of like talking about the Grail stories and how Chrétien de Troyes discovered them. Well, every generation, every culture has had Grail stories, and even the ancient Egyptians had them, of princes who went away on foreign journeys in search of this and that, which would grant them everlasting life and total knowledge of the universe. And some of these princes found it and they were unhappy, and hence they threw the box, which they normally identified as an iron box, and they linked it with the god Thoth, into the River Nile. And then, of course, many years later, another prince would accidentally just stumble upon it while doing something in the River Nile. So all of these tales are known. The story of Osiris is more to do with a very important quest, if you want, a quest for an after.